Hello, welcome to the interview here on France 24. Well, it's a country where 8-year-old child brides can be forced to marry men in their 60s, and where men and women live in separate, parallel universes in a system that really amounts to gender apartheid. But thanks to, some say, its vast oil wealth, Saudi Arabia has been able to paper over many of its repressive policies and its human rights abuses, and court some very powerful allies, chief among them the United States. And it's ruled, of course, by its absolute monarch, King Abdullah, now in his late 80s. Some say Saudi Arabia has even managed to buy its way out of the Arab Spring. And here to discuss some of these ideas with me today is my guest, Ali Al-Ahmed. I hope I got that right. You're a Saudi dissident, sir. You say you've dedicated your life really to promoting what you say is modernity and reform in your homeland, but you're no longer based there. You're in Washington, D.C. You're the director of the Institute for Gulf Affairs, and you've been there for 12 years. It's a tough fight you're up against here. Tell us how you became an outspoken critic of your own country. It's something happened when you were 14 years old.
Yeah, it started even before that. When in 1979, as a child, I saw the people protesting in November 1979 in my city and then the region I am from. And the police, National Guards that were killing people, including two of my cousins. So when you live near the oil field, inside the oil field, and you don't get anything from it except the smoke and the pollution, you have a different perspective. You start thinking that, this must change. And this is what exactly happened. And over the years, from my family, from my grandfather's time, our family has been always politically active. My cousins, my late uncle, for example, was a political prisoner in the 1960s, and I was in the 1980s with my father, and my nephew and brother are a political prisoner now.
So you use a political prisoner. I mean, that's a harsh term. Some say you were actually the youngest political prisoner ever.
At the time, when I was in prison, I mean, after that, there have been children who have been in prison. But at the time when I was in jail, I was the youngest political prisoner in that country at 14 years. Yes.
I don't want to overstate the importance and significance of religion, but how important significance is the fact you are a Shia Muslim, your family, correct?
Yes.
In a country where Sunni Muslim Islam is basically the only religion that can be practiced. Other religions, you're a heretic.
No, it's not. This is maybe not a correct description. In Saudi Arabia, even Sunni Islam that differs from the government.
The Wahhabi.
Not even the Wahhabi. I'm talking about the Saudi government specific interpretation of Islam. That comes from the Wahhabi Islam. However, even you have Wahhabi Muslims who are opposing the government, who are persecuted for their religious ideology.
So this is a very, very narrow range of religious
it's government
intolerance.
Approved, yes, and it really, religion is one of the venues that the Saudi government uses to oppress its citizens. You have oppression of women, you have oppression of tribes in Saudi Arabia, the Bedouins are oppressed, you have oppression of the regions. So you are talking about really a deluge of oppression for different reasons, that the Saudi ruling family, to maintain its power, must oppress every single entity in the country to maintain power. And it's not limited to Shia.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the Arab Spring itself. Much has been said about Saudi Arabia. It's sort of emerged intact. It's been very scared of the Arab Spring, a lot of people believe, doesn't want to see it happen in its own country. Yes. And it's spent a lot of money at home trying to ensure it doesn't happen there. Tell us a little bit about
the September, March 11, Day of Rage, that was supposed to happen in 2010. It didn't happen because the Saudi government put a lot of forces on the streets and announced that they will spend hundreds of billions of dollars.
So a mixture of repressive policies, plus government spending.
Carrots and sticks and carrots. However, most of these programs that were announced by the king, the King Abdullah, he's known as the king of initiatives. I mean, he makes a lot of announcements, but nothing comes out of it. It's a lot of smoke, a lot of talk, but most of it is smoke. For example, the program to sustain the unemployed, which you have about 3 million unemployed, right. 1.5 million of them qualified for this program called Hafiz in Arabic, and this program has been cut, suspended in the last week. So you are talking about they used it as a temporary fix for the rising feeling because of
And
the
then
Arab
as soon
Spring.
as that calmed
Yeah,
down a
that
little
calmed
bit,
down, yes.
they took the money back. Yet, we were speaking earlier before the show, and you were telling me there have actually in recent days there have been protests,
There
both in
have been-
Riyadh, the capital, and
there
outside.
have been protests in the eastern province. About 15,000 people came out in a different area of the eastern province. Also, there have been thousands of people protesting. There was a prominent religious leader arrested in the past few days. In Riyadh and Al Qasim, families of prisoners have been beaten. They were holding a sit-in. Imagine the change. A Sunni Salafi woman who were supposed to be home, they are coming out to the streets facing a well-armed police force and been beaten and electrocuted because they are demanding rights, or they are demanding the freedom of their children or their husbands. So you are seeing really a huge cultural change in terms of people demanding their rights.
No longer being scared to
Absolutely,
go
they're
out.
not scared.
We saw a lot of incidents across the Arab world in recent days, past week, the anti-Islam film protests, and
Yes.
we heard Barack Obama talk about America will not put up with religious intolerance. It has a tradition itself of religious tolerance. You say no country stands in starker contrast to America's religious tolerance in Saudi Arabia.
That's true. President Obama's statements are empty because if he really wants to do this, he should start with Saudi Arabia, his ally, his close ally. Because Saudi Arabia, for example, just last week allowed for the burial of non-Muslims in Saudi Arabia. It was not allowed before. If you die in Saudi
would they do
Arabia
with
as a Muslim, your body must leave the country because as a non-Muslim, your body is unclean. And even now, of course, if you can be buried in Saudi Arabia in a special cemetery, but no ritual, no ceremony, religious ceremony will be allowed to be conducted.
How?
So
Let me
you're talking about the kingdom of intolerance, the country of no religious freedom whatsoever.
Okay, you're not pulling any punches here against your homeland. How do you explain, and this is perhaps a stupid question, naive question, how do you explain the fact that Barack Obama, the same person who spoke about religious tolerance being in the tradition of America, has described Saudi Arabia as one of America's closest allies? Where does that come from?
It comes from the money. People say, oh, it's the oil. The oil itself does not make it. It's the money that Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries spend in Washington. They spend a lot of money. Look at the Clinton initiative, for example. They received tens of millions of dollars from the Gulf, from Saudi Arabia. Jimmy Carter, received over $30 million for his center from Saudi Arabia. No wonder he doesn't say anything about Saudi Arabia. Supposedly the president for human rights. He has never said a single thing about Saudi Arabia. Look at organizations, the United Nations, UNESCO, every major world organization has received money from Saudi Arabia to shut them down. Even the Human Rights Commission, the UN Human Rights, received $5 million a few months ago, so they maintain their silence.
I mean, it's pretty sad and cynical at the same time. If you were there in the White House, would you ask for America not to have a relationship with Saudi Arabia? Do you think they should sever relations? What would you like to see?
I don't think boycotting is a good idea. I think engaging them, and we have been advising the White House on, for example, you take the school books in Saudi Arabia, the education system. We have 5-6 million students who are being fed one of the worst things in the world, ideology, to hate. Take, for example, the Saudi school here in Paris. It teaches that you should kill all the Jews. It teaches that you should execute homosexuals and apostates and belonging to any idea that is like the French Revolution.
So basically, messages of hatred, incitement to violence are part of religious school textbooks.
It's government school.
Very little time, about 45 seconds. Could you briefly tell me where you see the generational leadership change? King Abdullah's in his late 80s. When he goes, do you see the prospect for change and reform, a real opening?
There is no reform in the Saudi kingdom. The future of Saudi Arabia will not include the Al Saud ruling family. This is as basic as that. The world and the West especially must deal with this fact that they will see a departure of this ruling family.
How many years are we talking?
We're talking about less than 5 years.
Less than 5 years from now, we will see a dramatic change then.
It will not be a kingdom anymore, it will be a republic.
And the Arab Spring will belatedly come to Saudi Arabia?
It will come to Saudi Arabia. It might not be a spring for the West, but it will be maybe a spring for some people in that country.
Ali Al-Ahmed, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
sharing your views. A Saudi dissident based in the U.S., director for the Institute for Persian Affairs, for Gulf Affairs, excuse me. Thank you for being my guest today and talking about a difficult situation in your homeland.
Thank you so
Thanks
much
to all of
for
you
having
for
me.
watching the
Thank you.
interview here on France 24.